We need to have a grown-up conversation. This is sort of my decision.
Hello and welcome to Leading Beyond the Lab. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of being joined by
Roel
Bulthuis,
Managing Partner and Head of Investments at Syncona, one of Europe's most influential life science venture builders. What really makes up a Syncona company?
So we don't chase deals that are in the market. We create our own deals. We take a lot of time to make a decision. We like difficult stuff. We like hard stuff. And I'll say this very carefully.
And with the founder-investor relationship, what's the common misalignment?
If I wanted to be a CEO, I should take a different job. I'm not going to sit on your seat doing that. Worst thing you can do is... I don't have control when we build a company. You don't have control when we build a company. There'll be a team that works on this. There's no way that you can exert control over what we do. Almost no one recognizes that the science is there, but the people are fundamental. If you don't build the right team, if you don't hire the right people, you're never going to build a company.
What do you think the future has in store for the European market?
That's a really dangerous question.
Hello and welcome to Leading Beyond the Lab. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of being joined by Roel Bulthuis, Managing Partner and Head of Investments at Syncona, one of Europe's most influential life science venture builders. Roel has spent a career building, funding and scaling some of Europe's most transformative biotechs, from launching new codes from scratch to supporting some of the most high-performing teams in the Syncona portfolio. In this conversation, we explore what it really takes to build a biotech that lasts. So without further ado, let's get into it, Roel. Welcome.
Sure, happy to. Thank you.
So I'd like to start today, Roel, by asking you, in your opinion, as Syncona has built some of Europe's most established biotechs, what really makes up a Syncona company?
Yeah, interesting question. I could probably sort of talk to that for a while. The basic thing is that sort of we don't chase deals that are in the market. We create our own deals, we create our own opportunities, and we believe that the combination of sort of our insights and the insights of the founders that we work with can create a differentiated set of companies that you can't find anywhere else in the market. The background to that is, look, on the positive thing is the European venture market has developed tremendously in the last couple of years. There's a lot more capital in the market. I think we're funding companies with ambition now, with the ambition also to scale businesses longer term. And it's led to a number of the European venture companies scaling their platforms and having more capital available for that. Fundamentally, when you think about life sciences, we do think that there's still a mismatch between the venture model and the asset cycle in life sciences. So venture capital, if you will, the kind of the 10-year closed-end funds, that concept was created around tech companies. So this is a sort of US West Coast tech company based idea that if you can sort of create, build and scale companies in a 3 to 5 year cycle, you can work with a 10-year fund. Right? That makes total sense. If you translate that concept to healthcare, where from the inception of an idea to the moment where you know that you have a product, to the moment that you can launch a product, that cycle is 10 to 15 years. And so we feel that we have set up a platform that allows you to invest sort of aligned with the asset cycle. So we have the duration of capital with the evergreen model that we're running. So you have the ability to stick to companies all the way from inception to sort of building and then to scaling those companies over time. And we also have the size of capital, the depth of capital that allows us to fund those companies with ambition from the start, and then all the way support them all the way to late stage clinical development, where we see that there's the best chances of creating liquidity for your investors.
And what was the reason why you decided to go down that route as a differentiator when you compare to other VC companies, for example?
Look, all the senior investment team at Syncona are people who have a long experience in investing or in operating companies. And so we've all seen the opportunity in healthcare. We've also all seen what the challenges are if you really want to create something that is new and differentiated. Most of us, I think, recognize at some point in our careers that there's different ways to be an investor, right? So I can be an investor and do that sort of, and I don't mean this negatively, but sort of opportunistically. So if there is a market cycle that allows me to invest right now, a lot of investors are sort of going after sort of mature clinical stage opportunities. that are in-licensed or spun out from somewhere else. That is a very good way to run a venture firm because it allows you to generate returns for your investors and do that.
Lower risk.
Most of us, well, yeah, but it's also something that is cycle dependent.
Okay.
Most of us believe that, and I guess most of us are driven by the idea that there is so much interesting science that comes out of universities that can create something that is not cycle dependent, but that is fundamentally has the ability to change the treatment paradigm for a patient. But in order to do that, you need to sort of have the patience and the ability to fund those companies long term. And so I think it's a platform, and I think it's a team of people that is sort of largely driven by, I guess the simple way we often say is we like difficult stuff. We like hard stuff. We like difficult problems, and difficult problems when you can solve them, right? So when we make an investment, and I'll say this very carefully, some founders will see that almost as a negative, but we take a lot of time to make a decision. We will spend 12 months with a scientific founder from the moment that we first hear their idea to the moment that we make the decision to start a company. But
why is that?
In those 12 months, we go through the entire journey from translating your scientific insight. So that is often the core or the basis for the company idea. But translating that to a product thesis and thinking through the entire journey from the sort of early translational research to the clinical development to the sort of regulatory requirement for that product and then the commercial positioning. And that often is almost an iterative process, because by the time that you get to the piece of biology that I discovered, sort of what label that could ideally lead to on a drug, think through what that label could do for a patient, why that is relevant for the patient, why it's relevant enough for a physician to prescribe it, why someone would reimburse that drug. If you then go back through, in order to get to that label, what clinical studies do I need to do in order to do those clinical studies? What validation do I need to early on? How do I finance that? You will realize that you need to do a couple of iterations of that process before you get to something that, sort of to your best knowledge at that point in time, is a financeable trajectory to get to a product that is clinically and commercially relevant. When we make that decision, it's not always 12 months, but when we make that decision, we make an investment with high conviction. And because we have high conviction, we're willing to deploy significant capital. And because we can deploy significant capital, you have the best probability or the highest probability to get something out of that piece of science, to really build a lasting company. You mentioned a couple of examples of our portfolio companies early on. These are companies that were created because we were willing to take significant risk. And when you take that risk, you set a company up to have the right strategy, to be able to recruit the right team, and to have the resources to fund an ambitious development plan. If you don't do that, the way that sort of European venture worked until 5 to 10 years ago, if you drip feed a company, the probability that something comes out of it is very low. The technical risk is high enough. So what you want to do is operate a company with limited operational and financial risk. And that's what you achieve this way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And do you find that when you engage with the founders for that period of time, that you're already hugely invested, I suppose, both functionally and somewhat emotionally, when it comes to the stage 12 months on or 6 months on where you looking to deploy the capital?
Well, you build a relationship during that period.
Are they often talking to you and other VCs at that time, or are they already sold on you by that point, do you think?
Well, my advice and our advice to founders will always be don't just trust us. Sort of take a look around, take your references, and see if you really want to work with us. Many of the founders that we work with sort of come through a reference from another founder, from someone who's already in our portfolio, and who recommends the discussion with us.
The best way.
But we don't have to do that on an exclusive basis. I would almost say, while you build a relationship during those 12 months, we're going to do our diligence. We're going to want to know if this is the right asset, if we work with a founder who is investable. And investable for us means this is someone who we would like to support, but also someone who recognizes the value that we bring to the table. But that should work both ways, right? You should spend your time sort of understanding if we are a group of investors that can really contribute to what you're doing. It's actually quite interesting, again, coming back to how we're different from other investors. There's quite a few of our portfolio companies where the foundational IP was filed on the basis of inventions that were made by scientific founders, academic founders, but also by the Syncona team. So during that 12 months, look, there's a piece of biology which sort of generally drives our decision to invest. And there's a piece of conceptually translating that biology to a product thesis that often leads to a level of intellectual property, which sometimes is sort of the basis for sort of a relevant filing or not. But it's that combination of insights, the translational thesis that leads to a product, and the basic biology that is the foundation for a company. Right? And that's why I said earlier that if as a founder, and sort of we love the people that we work with and we love to back them, and they are the most important people in our portfolio, the best team between a founder and an investor is one that's based on a mutual recognition of sort of complementarity of contributions. Of value. And so if we can build that kind of relationship, that's the best place to start a company.
And with that, what were the main lessons that you've learned along the way from an investor's perspective, with some of the success stories like Autolus, for example?
It's a long list, probably. So first of all, it's worth spending 12 months together. Sometimes it's worth spending 18 months together, and sometimes you go a bit quicker than that. But Autolus is an interesting example. So so our team, and this was sort of, I wasn't there, so I can't take any credit for that. But my colleagues started that company out of a university, so from scratch, and that's 11 years ago. They got their product approved in November of last year. They launched their product in the first quarter of this year. And so you go all the way through the cycle from a foundational thesis to a product that is now on the market and a product that is now benefiting patients.
In cell therapy as well, no mean feat.
In cell therapy, in the oncology field. So it's a really transformational product. So the first lesson there is that it is actually worth spending a lot of time thinking through the thesis and sort of building that thing in-house. So that high conviction build has allowed us to build a company, scale a company that has significant manufacturing facilities, for instance, here in the UK, and that now is launching a drug commercially in the US as well as in Europe a little bit later. So you can actually build a standalone biotech company with a commercial product. There's not so many examples of that across Europe and the UK, or if I can take sort of the UK as part of Europe.
I still do.
So when you have that ambition, you can actually do it. So it's worth pursuing these things. But when you do that, you can create a lot of value, and you can create products that are quite meaningful for patients.
And when you engage with founders, the deal is done, effectively. What are the non-negotiables in the first 12 months? If it's consistent, you may say it's tailored.
Yeah, look, I mean, the sort of as a negotiator, I will generally say that nothing is set in stone. What we try to do is to create an environment where sort of everyone can focus on the things that they do best. And so sort of what is non-negotiable for us, if you want to use that term, is we invest in a founder because we would like them to be focused on the science. And that may sound super trivial, but in most cases, when you start a company, when you take your IT out of academia and into a company, you're going to a completely different role, because all of a sudden you have to take care of operating a business, and all of a sudden you have to, set up a website, sort of put a payroll in
manage
place,
stakeholders,
and sort of manage offices. And so those are all things that we try to take out of the way. So we have a team that has done this many times now, our launch team that takes care of all the operational stuff around building a company. And it's literally everything. So we can essentially deliver you a product where the moment that we make the investment, we know what office we're going to get into. We know sort of which people we're going to hire. There is a payroll, there is a website, everything is in place. What you need to do is focus on the experiments that we want to do to create value for the business. That's probably the biggest non-negotiable for us, to make sure that we actually, from the moment that we make the investment, we focus on creating value. That's what we should be doing.
When I work with founders or CEOs of companies, ironically, they will often say there's a line where investor involvement, for example, in the science, becomes counterproductive.
Sure.
And as a venture builder, I imagine that part of your offering a value proposition is that you deliver some of your value by being more involved. So how do you do that without killing off momentum, I suppose is the right way?
Yeah, so I know what you mean, and it is actually, so I recognize the point, because it's sort of across venture, it's a very common thing that investors get so involved, boards get so involved, and boards in our industry are dominated by investor representatives.
Yeah.
I am part of that system. I don't think it's right. There's two sides to this. Investors need to recognize their place. Everyone needs to recognize their place. But I'm going to invest in a founder. So when we invested in the founders of Gyroscope, or when we invested in the team that runs Beacon, so we do that because we feel that those are the people that are going to create value for us. We hope, and we will discover during the diligence process, that there is a relationship of mutual respect, of mutual recognition, that there is a contribution that is relevant. If I wanted to be an operator, if I wanted to be a CEO, I should take a different job. So I'm not going to sit on your seat doing that. But I do feel very comfortable that I can have a discussion with you, or a debate with you on, so when you see results coming out of your clinical study, how that impacts our ability to take the next step, to finance, to sort of think about the commercial proposition of our product. And we should be able to have that discussion, because you recognize, hopefully, that we bring insights there from industry, from our discussions with key decision makers in pharma, from some of the people that we have on our team, that can help you create a product that is more valuable. But we try to do that in such a way that, again, that recognizes the line between executive management of a company, board that provides oversight. At the early stages of company creation, when you make a lot of big decisions about where you go as a company, we therefore also try to keep the complexity of board and shareholder governance to a minimum. So you will see that often when we do a seed round investment, company create, even when we do Series A investments, we don't build very broad syndicates. It's not because we don't recognize the value of other investors. We generally feel that early on, it's as limited as you can keep the challenge of having to sort of manage
too many cooks,
too many stakeholders. And especially in that period where, as a founder, and we try to complement sort of our founder teams with executives that come with leadership experience from external, but you're building a leadership team during that period. That's not the moment where you want to have to deal with a board that has 6 different investors on it. That's the moment where you want to have a direct line with an investor you trust, and that you can have a dialogue with about how you do things best. Now, when you get to the point that where you have a sort of a full executive team, and where there's a good strategy, and where you know that sort of your product strategy that you're working towards, it is really helpful to expand that syndicate of investors, to broaden the cap table, to make sure that you have access to capital over time. And there's a lot of investors that are interested at that stage. Not many people want to play at that early stage anyway. It's too risky, it's too much work.
And I suppose, to your earlier point, that initial 6, 12, 18 months where you're getting to know the founders gives you the required confidence that they can do their job properly, so you shouldn't feel the impulsive need to then get involved in day-to-day decision making.
Yeah.
And with the founder-investor relationship, which is a key conduit of any deal that's made, what's a common misalignment, for example, that you think should be addressed early doors?
Well, we talked about quite a few of those things already. I think one of the common challenges is you don't spend enough time together to get to know each other and to make a decision if you really want to do this. When we just talked about Autolus, so some of the members of that team have been there from the start. They're still there. So they've worked with some of the same investors for 10, 12 years. One of my former colleagues in another fund used to put up a slide to show the average length of a marriage. across different geographies. It's about 7 to 8 years in Europe.
Really?
Yeah, it's not very long.
No.
And you're going to work with us for 10, 12 years?
I think I'm beating that already.
Yeah, you might have sort of beaten the average already. If you recognize that you're going to work with us for 10 to 12 years, you should spend time sort of getting to know us and doing your diligence and making sure that these are really the people that you want to work with. Once you make that decision, there's a commitment from both sides to make it work. And as in any relationship, that means that you will come across challenges and you will need to resolve challenges and questions that you find over time. If you've done your job early on during your engagement,
yeah,
the way I guess as you said,
yeah,
then I think you're well set up to have that discussion. You raised the point on kind of boards and management alignment. It is really important that so you build a board structure, and so we find it quite important to bring in a chair of the board who can be a sounding board for leadership and can sort of build a constructive board management relationship. So we try to find people who are very experienced at that job early on.
From industry or investor? Or
generally
both?
From industry. We have we have a group of executive partners within Syncona who are sort of industry leaders who can take that role early on. So if you take my sort of partner, John Tsai, for instance, so John was the chief medical officer at Novartis before this. So he has a huge amount of executive leadership experience. So that's someone who can help early on to think about, because he has sort of huge operational experience. So he will recognize the challenges that you have at that point in time.
And bring value as well to the founders that he works with. Yeah.
So there's a lot of big questions about sort of translational clinical strategy over time. He will be able to help you with that, but he also understands how the investors think, right? And then so he might take a role like that, or someone from our network who comes with a similar profile. But it's very beneficial if you get someone with a scientific mind and someone who has the ambition to be really creative on the scientific part. If you pair them with someone who comes from a more sort of executive leadership role, operational role, create a very powerful group.
In my experience, one of the most contentious points is when you exchange the overall leadership of a CEO or an operating CEO. But I'm yet to see like a consistent theme around what that stage is, because I suppose a lot of it comes down to the competency of the individual in-house, and you know, I'm sure there's early stage founders that make great CEOs. You know, a lot of them move into more technical roles. I'd like to understand your thoughts around that topic, because that's quite a great one for the audience.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's a mistake that we often make in our industry, where you appoint a CEO and then sort of on the basis of the notion that we might need a new CEO in 2 years from now. It's very destructive to
a restart, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really challenging for a management team, for the rest of the company culture to do big things like that. And you're right, some founders can make really good CEOs. I think it's really hard though to make that decision the moment that you meet someone. I think it's really hard to make that decision once you've spent 12 months together, because you've never done it. And so my advice often is, especially as a scientific founder who has and not everyone has the ambition, right? So let's be careful. So I'm not going to, you're the founder, so you're the CEO. That's a conversation that we will have. Is it your ambition to be the CEO? And that's a longer conversation in which we will share our experience with what does that mean? What implications does it have? I'll probably introduce you to a couple of founders that we've worked with, or people that I have invested in the past who went through that journey. Some of them decided to be CEOs over time. Some of them decided they wanted to stay on the research side. But you need to take those references. You need to take that advice to make up your mind whether you have the ambition to be a CEO, whether you have the ambition to be a CSO. Maybe you want to have a different relationship with the company that you founded. Maybe you want to be on the scientific advisory board and see that we bring in other people to lead it. That's the first conversation, right? So your ambition needs to be aligned with the way that we build the company. If your ambition is to be the CEO, and if you've never done that before, and our assessment is, because the phenotype of a CEO can be many different things.
True, yeah.
You're looking for certain attributes, it's your business, you know that. Our advice would generally be, my advice would generally be, don't do it immediately. And let's not appoint a CEO. Let's build a company early on where we structure it in such a way that, look, we can bring in an executive chair, a lot easier than bringing in a full-time CEO. Because for the first 2 years, you're going to be
you don't need
science-focused.
CEO.
You don't need a full-time CEO.
Yeah.
So I can get someone in there who spends a day, 2 days a week with you, be a sounding board, be a mentor, right? If you're a scientific founder who wants to be a CEO, I'll probably find you an executive chair who went through that journey, right? And then was a CEO, has done that for several times. And so that person will be able to advise you. And then we can have the discussion again, sort of 2 years after that, a year after that, and see where we want to go. So worst thing you can do is push for the CEO role, and a lot of people do that because they want to have a certain level of control.
Yeah.
Which no one has.
Yeah.
I don't have control when we build a company. You don't have control when we build a company. It's going to be a team that works on this. There's no way that you can exert control over what we do. If that's what you want, we're probably not the right investor anyway. The worst thing you can do is push for the CEO role and then find out 2 years afterwards that you're not the right person for that. It's really hard to move back from a CEO role to someone who reports to the CEO. It's a lot easier to do 2 years as a CSO and step up to the CEO role.
And also, if they're a proven veteran of being a CEO for early stage companies, you're almost getting mentored, aren't you?
Yeah.
If there's an opportunity to watch and learn from that person.
Yeah.
And what are the hallmarks of a good CEO, the ones that are consistent?
That's a really dangerous question because there's some really sort of different phenotypes that I've worked with that I've been very impressed with. The best CEOs that I've worked with, the things that they have in common. So one is a very strong focus on building a team and building a company culture, which is a really hard thing to do when you run a startup, because there's a zillion things that come on your plates every day.
Yeah.
And everyone will tell you that you're creating value in the lab, and it's the product, it's the science, it's everything. But if you want to build a successful company, you need to build that company from the start with the expectation or the ambition that you're going to be successful and therefore that you're going to scale your business. If you're going to scale your business, then the first couple of people that you hire and the culture that you build amongst that sort of small group of people is going to be the core of how that organization develops over time. If you build that core in an effective way, you're going to be able to hire the best people going forward. You also solidify your leadership because that culture is built under your leadership with you as the central person and with a team that recognizes your leadership and hopefully gets the space to be the best version of themselves, and therefore they feel comfortable in their roles. So however trivial it may sound or how difficult it may sound, and actually many of the boards of kind of a seed stage or a Series A stage company, when you talk about through the corporate objectives, and I suggest that there should be something about company culture in there. I've had so many experiences where people then said, oh, come on, we have better things to do.
Really?
It's the worst decision in the world.
Yeah.
So science is fundamental in our industry. Look, everyone recognizes how important science is in our industry. A lot of people will say that people are also important. Almost no one recognizes that the science is there, but the people are fundamental. If you don't build the right team, if you don't hire the right people, you're never going to build a company. It's never going to be successful. It's at all levels. If I have a strong leadership team, because it's actually interesting, you made the points earlier about board and management alignment. And I said there's sort of two sides to that. The one side is a responsibility for the board to behave in the right way. All right? You sometimes have to stop a board in a discussion and say, look, this is not your responsibility. This is not productive. This is not what you should be doing.
So the chair's there for, I suppose.
Totally. Yeah. If you have the right chair, you can do that. But there's also a big responsibility on the side of a management team. Because if a management team leads, and if a management team, the right format to come to a board is, this is where we are, this is where we're going, these are the different scenarios that can pan out. Our recommendation is to go there. We believe it's there. Any questions? It's my leadership. The worst thing you can do is to come to a board and ask what to do, which unfortunately often happens.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a vicious circle because if
after they've already set the plan, though, I suppose.
Yeah,
because obviously to win
plans is biotech. Plans change every week.
So it's almost like they haven't evaluated the options before even.
But if I have a strong culture, if I have a strong leadership team, I will come to the boards and the board will recognize my leadership.
Got you.
And that builds a strong company because I'm leading, I'm driving, I know where I'm going. I'm using the board to get their expertise, to get their insights, but it's on the basis of directions that I set as a CEO. That's where you need to be.
Yeah, because that gives you confidence and lowers your calms the mind.
If you see, sort of imagine you're sitting in a boardroom and the CEO comes in and says, well, we could do this, we could do that, what do you think? Doesn't really give me a lot of confidence, right? But it happens.
Yeah, surprisingly so.
It's yes, it's
surprising. I think Series A clinical stage asset.
The hard thing is that so every CEO, every management team in our industry knows that they are dependent on their board for funding because their board is dominated by investor representatives. So if I don't keep the boards happy, then how am I going to raise my next round of financing? Because they're going to have to do a sort of significant contribution of that. But the worst response to that is to try to keep them happy. The worst response to that is to try to please them or to do whatever sort of that boards want you to do. I may shoot myself in the foot now because my CEOs will.
You get challenged every time now.
You should shut up. This is sort of my decision. But so we need to have a grown-up conversation. There cannot be a conversation on the basis of dependency. We're not building the right company.
Yeah. And one of the things that stands out about you and Syncona is their commitment to the European market. Mm-hmm. When I look, you've resisted the urge, if you like, to go and explore the deals that are available in the US, which a lot of the VC companies that we've worked with do. Mm-hmm. Could you explain what that commitment to the European market is and what you think is great about the European market?
There's a lot of things. Look, we're based in London. We're based in a location that is close to some of the best universities in the world. And there's an amazing scientific output from those universities. So there's as many opportunities here to create companies as there are in the US around some of the big centers, if I go to Boston or to San Francisco. So we have no shortage of options to build companies here. What we lacked for a long time in the European environment was platforms that had the abilities to fund companies with ambition. And again, many years before I joined, but the people who build Syncona set out to do that, to build a platform that had long-term duration of capital and sort of the amount of capital that would allow you to do that. We're not alone in that anymore, which is one of the things that excites me about European markets, because by now there's a number of other VC platforms across Europe that have scaled and that have the volume of capital that allow you to build companies. So what's interesting today is we always had the scientific output. Culturally, we're shifting, and I think the UK is a front runner in that as compared to many other European geographies, maybe with the Benelux and with the Scandinavian countries, where culturally scientists are more inclined to think about an entrepreneurial career. It's very different from 10, 15 years ago, where we have the volume of capital in the market in private markets that allows us to really build companies with ambition here. Again, until I would say 10 years ago, maybe even 6, 7 years ago. By the time you get to mid-stage clinical with a European biotech, you were dependent on going to NASDAQ. You were dependent on doing a listing or selling your company to be able to finance the company going forward. We now raise capital to run phase 3 trials for privately held businesses. And we can do it because we can do a big part of it, but we also find sort of like-minded partners at that stage of the investment cycle who want to come in with us. So for Beacon, for instance, we raised 170 million last year to run a pivotal, which allows us to build a company that has control of destiny to, by the time that they get to a phase 3 readout, to commercialize that product on their own, not being dependent on sort of public capital markets, or to transact at that. That's the best way to get a return for your investors, because we don't need to sell. We can operate that thing on the basis of private capital and without a listing. So we like Europe, first of all, because we're here. Yeah. And when you do company builds, you want to be close to your companies, you want to be close to your founders. I need to be able to get on a train or sort of take my bike and sort of go to the company, and sort of I need to be there within an hour because I want to spend time with the team, with the founders constantly, to be able to build a relationship where they actually get value out of us as an investor. There's more people who sort of want to do startups nowadays in Europe, so there's more entrepreneurial talent.
More dynamism.
There's more dynamism, but also because we went through that cycle now a couple of times of funding companies with ambition. There's more people in the European market that have seen the end-to-end trajectory of a company built to private rounds of financings, public financings, M&A transactions. So I have more management talent in the market, which was always a challenge in the European market. And again, I have the capital to fund it.
And the European market then is, I'm fascinated by that because I think we've got the same amount of universities in the top 10 as the US. But like you said earlier, the route to market and the platform for those businesses being successful, as a Brit, it's nice to hear that there's companies like Syncona who provide that opportunity. What do you think the future has in store for the European market?
It's a really hard question right now.
There's lots going on, isn't there?
I don't have a crystal ball, and there's a zillion different things. Look, so as an industry in Europe, I think we need to keep going as we are right now. So I think we're building some really good companies. I believe we are sort of thinking about company creation and companies building and scaling with the right level of ambition, and sort of the opportunities there. So that is where we need to keep going. I wish that sort of the European sort of policymakers would put us in a position where the European market retains its relevance commercially for the pharma industry. I mean, especially here in the UK, you've now seen pharma responding to a situation where the way that we pay for our products makes sort of this economy less attractive for pharma companies to be active in. And that has a huge range of implications. It means that if I'm not an attractive commercial market, pharma is not going to prioritize these markets for their commercial organization, so products might not be available for patients. But it starts early already. The moment that I recognize that this is not an interesting commercial market, I'm not going to run clinical trials here, which is a challenging thing in this country anyway. So that requires some policy changes. But I'm going to run clinical development in the centers that are going to be critical for my commercial rollout. If you're not that, you're not going to be in the trial. So again, I lose access for patients to the drug. So
you lose your edge, don't you?
You lose your edge, right? And I guess the economics of pharma sort of between the US and Europe, that at a higher level is not a sustainable situation. So we will see some changes there, because the US is also recognizing that they're kind of sponsoring some of the innovation that we're doing here right now. But I think with the right set of policy measures for European markets, I think we can come a long way. In a maturing biotech industry that actually is generating some really interesting results right now.
And dusting off your crystal ball once more, what areas as an investor of science, new modalities, where do you see the growth or interest in the coming few years? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I'm not sure if I'm going to give you a very satisfactory answer, because a lot of times when you ask that question, you get people reflecting on the things that are currently happening.
Which is the trends, which you avoid almost.
Which honestly I don't find very interesting, because when we make investment decisions, and especially when you make investment decisions about sort of company creation and with that products that should sort of be on the market in 12 to 15 years from now, I can't be guided by the fact that everyone is investing in obesity right now.
150 assets under development in the US or in obesity?
Look, if I'm a momentum investor, if I'm an opportunistic investor, I'm going to take late stage programs in the obesity space, and I'm going to recognize that there's something there. If I build a company, I'm going to make my decisions on the basis of, first of all, the sort of the general medical need. So there's across indications. There's a huge set of indications right now that still have sort of significant unmet clinical need for patients. So there is a market opportunity there. We know that pharma has a huge patent gap coming, and that they will have to continuously refill their pipeline. And so the opportunity is generally there. That's a check mark for us. We're going to be intrigued by something that we sometimes sort of refer to as sort of an unfair advantage in development, because we have an insight that no one else has. So it's often a piece of biology that no one has discovered before that puts us in a position to treat a disease in such a way that current standard of care can't. And that's what builds valuable companies. So I don't care right now if that's going to be an oncology program or an I&I program or a neurology program, which are the biggest areas commercially for the pharma industry, or that is in the women's health space, right? I need to know that I can create a product that has value. Then I also feel that I'm in a position to create liquidity around that for investors.
And what is the vision then for Syncona beyond financial returns? What's the 5-10 year vision? Where is Syncona heading?
So I believe that we've created the basis for a platform that can become one of the leading European, if not global, investors in the healthcare space. I strongly believe in the model where sort of the evergreen model that allows you to take a long-term view on investments. The way I often explain it is the investment decision initially, right? So the identification of the kind of the interesting piece of biology that you invest in, and the decision that you make in the first sort of 2 to 3 years of an investment, as your ticket to play, that you're sort of creating your shiny object. Your ability to then continue to invest and continue to invest significantly, because no one makes money by company creation. We don't make money creating companies. We're creating an opportunity when we do that company creation. Because we're so integrally involved in building that company, because we know every decision that we're making in those first couple of years, which will define the ability to develop a product, which will define the characteristics of that drug going forward, we can have the confidence by the time that we get to later stages, when we see data, to deploy a significant amount of capital. We're also in a position, because we are a significant holder in the cap table, we're in a position to make that investment. That's very different than when you see market deals and where if I want to sort of put a significant ticket in it at a later stage, it's going to impact price, right? There's a shortage of supply of those deals, and I won't have the same knowledge. So creating a shiny object early on and then having the ability to fund it long-term with ambition makes it a shiny object that's not necessarily available. And that's what people want. People want the shiny thing that you can't get. So we're creating companies where we're significant holders, and in situations where those companies have control of destiny, they can launch a product on their own, or they can decide to transact with pharma. And that's your best way to create a return on investment for your investors. So I think we can scale that business. And that's what we're doing right now.
And what about you personally? So what do you love about your job, effectively, as an investor?
I enjoy the adventure every day.
You left industry, right? So
I left.
Short while ago.
I learned a lot in industry. So I love being an investor, and I love it for my own reasons. So a lot of people like it because they want to be an investor and sit on the board. I think my role as an investor is sort of creating a platform, creating an environment, and that is at the level of sort of an investment team that sort of excels at what they do, but also at running boards that are the best possible partner for management teams. And to do that as part of a platform where you have people with investment experience, but also operating experience at different levels. So to mention John, on the clinical side, we have someone who used to run regulatory for a large biotech. One of our executive partners is the CEO of a NASDAQ listed company. So you have this set of people that when we come together can be creative, because we run a fairly agile setup, but also brings a level of industry experience that allows you to create things that would otherwise not exist. And so I think that's a huge opportunity. It's fun to be part of that.
We've got time for one more question, Roel.
There we go.
How would you recommend other founders and scientists reach you if they would like to get out and hear more about the wonderful work that Syncona is doing?
Look,
to get on your radar.
To get on our radar. Look, we have, so we talked a lot about building relationships.
Yeah.
And sort of the best way for us to make investment decisions is based on a relationship that we build. One way to achieve that is if you're an ambitious scientist, look at your network. There will be other people in your network that have worked with us before. They are often a very important reference point for us. My team is out there constantly. I'm out there all the time. We love speaking to ambitious scientists. And we love sort of challenging conversations about, these are often conversations that sort of precede the idea of a company formation, but we love the conversations where you need a sounding board, where you need to explore how your science could potentially lead to a company creation project or to a product. It's not trivial for someone who works in academia to make that translation step all the time. Sometimes people do have that, come to that idea themselves, but use that interface. So again, best way is to find me, find one of my team. We come to scientific conferences, we're at investor conferences. Send us an email and we'll come to your institute and we'll have a discussion. We're super eager to do these things because that's where our deal flow comes from. It's those discussions that are relevant for us.
Thank you, Roel.
You're welcome.
It's been great having you on board.
It was fun.